Well, hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to the very first episode of Generations Unfiltered. My name is Shannon Curtis.
And I'm Dr. Dee Dee Curtis.
So, for this podcast that we do here, we kind of bring you our opinions on current events and big news headlines based on, well, our experience and our different generational takes on what's going on in the world around us. So, for today's topics, we're going to dive into a few different things, including Shedeur Sanders and why we think he went so low in the NFL draft. We're also going to be debunking some big myths around student loans. But first things first, I want to talk to you about something, Mom, because here's the thing. Mother's Day is coming up, and obviously you're a mom. I am not a mom, but I was scouring the internet trying to find us something to do for Mother's Day and looking for a Mother's Day brunch. And I had to bring this conversation topic to you. Why is Mother's Day brunch so expensive? It's unbelievable to me.
It is, and I think it's expensive because they know that people will pay whatever they ask them to on Mother's Day. That's all it is. I mean, the food that they are cooking on Mother's Day does not cost any more than it does any other day of the week. But that's one thing that most people will spend extra money for Mother's
Mhm.
Day. And so it is a supply and demand thing. That's all it is. That's all I can say.
And you're right, because like I found myself, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's $125 a person, let me just go ahead. And even again, myself, we don't eat $125
We
worth of food.
really don't. That's my whole budget almost for 2 or 3 weeks.
Seriously. And but you do it because you're right. Like it's your mom and you're like, yeah, let's go ahead. And what always gets me is like when you see huge families out, because it's just us when we go out to Mother's Day brunch. You'll see families with like 8 people going out to brunch.
Oh yeah, people easily spend $1,000. I mean, if it's a family, they're spending $1,000 on Mother's Day, but that's one day besides Christmas that people will spend $1,000 on whatever because it's mother.
As the mom, I'm like, do you like what is it that you really want to do on Mother's Day? Like, what's your ideal Mother's Day?
My ideal Mother's Day for me personally is if the Dallas Mavericks were playing in the playoffs and Luka Doncic was on our team and I
Oh,
was
I know.
watching them play after I had a great dinner somewhere. Or I don't even mind cooking on Mother's Day. When I grew up, my mother cooked on Mother's Day, but my mom didn't really believe in going out to dinner that much. So that new Mother's Day brunch thing, that's a relatively new thing for your generation, but in my mother did not. You cooked it. Okay, this is the thing. You had Easter, you had the traditional Easter dinner, then you had Mother's Day, and your mother also cooked for Mother's Day. So I
Mhm.
don't know, but for me, it would be to have a good dinner, whether at home or out somewhere, and then watch the Dallas Mavericks play with Luka Doncic. That's my ideal. Or with Dirk, or we could even go farther back with Jason Kidd and Jed and JJ Barea and Sean Marion. That is my traditional, that's my favorite Mother's Day thing to do.
I love it. I'm okay. I like all of those. That sounds fun. I get to reap the benefits of that too.
Unfortunately, not one of the people that I just said is still on the Mavericks team. So
No,
I don't know how my Mother's Day is going to be this year.
that's okay. That's okay. I can take care. At least we have the brunch part down. We have that part down. We're gonna eat some good food. The Mavericks just not in the playoffs. Luca is. There's Luca.
Let's not talk about it. We can't talk about it. This has to be a happy moment for me, and I
No.
cannot talk about this. Okay, we can't talk about
But
that.
here's what we can talk about. We can talk about this in sports because this was a happy moment. Shedeur Sanders finally got picked up in the NFL draft after falling much lower than I think just about anybody thought he was going to. And so now, for people who don't know, we both have backgrounds in sports. Now, I was a sports reporter for several years and also did my master's professional project on domestic violence rates in the NFL. And I want to get your take on it as well, Mom, because you also have done a lot of research on the NIL specifically, and of course on college sports.
NIL is so new. And then I found out a couple of years ago, my doctorate is in public policy. And, that means public policy can be in anything. So I did quite a bit of research a couple of years ago on it and then to follow it up. And the thing about it with NIL, it changes so much because, they had those lawsuits, and you just recently had a federal judge that ruled on NIL. But I think personally with the Sanders brothers, I think it was a personal thing. I think it was far more a personal thing than it was a talent thing or anything else. I think the NFL was trying to give a message to athletes that came in from college that had NIL benefits, and I think that's what it was. That's me personally. I don't think it had anything to do with his talent, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it was a talent-based thing. I've seen a lot of people say that they thought it was racial. I don't even think it was necessarily that. I do think, and I've seen a lot of mixed reporting on this, and how he handled some of his NFL interviews, especially like in regards to how he handled like his interviews with the Giants, and how
Mm-hmm.
Brian Daboll like said he really came into the interview not prepared and just and very arrogant, in which I can totally see. I'm not saying it's a bad thing because personally, if I were in that exact same position at his age, with his talent level, with his background, oh, I would be completely arrogant. I would be so much worse than this child. Like, you know what I mean? I would just be completely insufferable. But so I get it. So I think it was a combination of things. I think, yes, I could definitely see the NFL trying to send a kind of message to these kids who are coming in thinking that one, they're going to be able to control the NFL the way they have had control over the NCAA, especially over this last season. And two, also kind of sending a message like to future athletes, like, hey, you can't come in and do this thing. Like, if you're going to come in with this kind of level of arrogance, thinking that you're going to come in and dictate where you're going to go in this league, we're going to show you that no, you're not.
Yeah, and I think too, I think their family made some mistakes. Now, I am partial to Shedeur and Shiloh because I watched them. They were one of the first reality shows that I watched, and they were little boys.
Yes.
Therefore, I feel a connection with them. Plus, they're from my city, and for them being from DFW, I really am partial toward them. And the thing that people have to understand, they are nice kids. They have not gotten
Hmm.
in trouble. You don't see them doing anything. The only thing people can say about them is that they're arrogant. They're prime time like their dad. And
Right.
yeah, they're prime time and they act like prime time. But even so, when you see them talk about it, they said they were not spoiled. Now, that's relative. Spoiled relative to whom they were spoiled. But I think Dion raised them to be good men. And I definitely believe, I mean, it is, that there was some type of, I've heard people say, was there a collusion? I'm not going to go that far as to say that, but I think there was a little bit of groupthink on we are going to show Deion Sanders' sons and Deion Sanders that they
Hmm.
don't run the NFL. And I think that had a lot to do with it. And maybe, I mean, they're not going to get a chance to do it over because they're not going to be drafted again.
Hmm.
But maybe another family in that same situation can kind of stand back a little bit and give, I say, respect to the league, respect. And I know I did see a video, and I was like, oh my God! I saw a video on one of the social media sites where Deion Sanders was talking about he wouldn't let his son go and play for certain teams. And I
Hmm.
think that probably had a lot to do with it. So I think the family, I think, had they had some role in determining how those young men were treated by the NFL. And the NFL is like, you know what? The NIL has nothing to do with the NFL. Now, I
Hmm.
know they said that Shedeur would still keep some of his NIL contracts or whatever, things that he got with them, because he had several with many companies. That's not going to end. And the fact that he is making less money really with the NFL because he dropped, what was it, number 144, was
Yeah, I think so.
drafted 144. And so now they're predicting, I think if you look at it, it was stated that he was valued at like 6.4 million with
Hmm.
NIL and with I think his contract now is going to be a little over 4 million, and so that, of course, that's dropping
Yeah.
considerably. But the good thing about it is that if he can keep those contracts, and he's going to have to perform.
Also, shout out to Shiloh for getting picked up by, who was it, Tampa
Yeah,
Bay. He's
I
okay
knew.
with Tampa Bay.
I know. I was proud of him.
I know. I'm very excited for both of them because I feel the same way. Like, I just absolutely adore them. I think they're adorable. I really do. And you know me, I love the arrogance. I have always I love their daddy when he was arrogant and playing for the Cowboys. I loved everything about prime time. I always have. Um, but yeah, I definitely do. I think it was the NFL sending a message more so to future college players coming into the league. I think they were kind of putting their foot down and showing, like I said, more so sending a message to the future college players than they were to even Shedeur.
To me, the greatest challenge is that the children of super athletes, you're not going to, Deion Sanders himself is not going to make another Deion Sanders. I mean, you're not,
Right?
not going to make another of the best. Michael Jordan's children were not going to be Michael Jordan. I mean, I think LeBron
LeBron's
James is the
son.
best at that. You're not going to make another you. And I think although Shedur could be great, he's not going to be his dad.
I don't think that there was necessarily collusion, but I'll say this. I never put it past anybody. You know
Oh,
what I
no,
mean?
no, me either.
Especially when you think
Either.
of like the prank call that happened with Shedeur, where and then to come to find out the guy who did the prank call was the defensive coordinator was the son of the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. And then you're just like, this okay, okay.
Back up a little bit. Yeah, that it was too much.
Exactly. Like, okay, now things are just feeling a little too convenient for me. I don't know. The NFL is looking into that one, so I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think this was very much so the NFL making kind of a stance.
Yeah, and with NIL being new, I mean, the regulations just happened like a year or so ago. The regulations just came out. The first regulations came out with the class action lawsuit, and then you know that a federal judge, gave an injunction against the NCAA because the NCAA was like, they have been just running people and making all of this money for all of these years, and so they thought that they were going to continue to run how a person would manage their name, image, and likeness.
Hmm.
And so a federal judge says, "Oh, no, 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 no! You have," and really, it was an antitrust lawsuit that they won. Plus, they were sued by several states, including the state of Tennessee. And so they told them to back up. And recently, they said, "You really back up." As a matter of fact, you cannot even make laws because those are antitrust laws. When schools started making all of this money off of student athletes, and the schools were making money, and especially when you see the Fab Five from Michigan, and they all
Oh,
said how
yes.
they were hungry, they didn't even have money to buy food. And I think that's one of those institutions that should have never started. It was one of those, like, I hear people all the time saying in many sports, it's just a business, and I always say slavery was a business too. Luckily,
Hmm.
somebody was smart enough to realize it was a business that never should have happened, and the business of them making money off of student athletes, and the athletes not getting anything from it, that they could not even afford food. And then you look at what Reggie Bush, I think they always should have paid him. I think
Oh, yeah.
that's one of those institutions that was always wrong. And I'm glad that they realized that it was wrong. And I'm glad personally, I'm glad to see all of these kids making money when schools make money. And I think the latest legislation said that they can get 22% of the money from power conferences can go to the students. And the only problem with that, these NIL rules are only for power conferences in most D1 schools. And so you still have these kids for other schools that are not going to get that same benefit. I'm happy for Shedur. I'm happy for Shiloh to get drafted. I'm just happy for both of them, because I think the thing that people have to look at it is these are nice young men. These are not the young men that's out here doing crazy things. And I really appreciated it when I saw them. And he kept saying, I think Shedur, he's so sweet. He was like, God is not leaving me, and I thank God
Hmm.
for it. And I can relate to that. He just seems like a nice kid to me. And so what? He's
Yeah.
a little arrogant. Most, how old is he? 20, 22, something like that, 22.
Something like that.
They're arrogant. They're just
Right.
arrogant.
And now finally, we have to talk about student loans because there is so much, and I can't believe I'm going to say this word, misinformation going around in regards to student loans, especially on social media. If I see one more person post a video talking about you can mail a letter to your credit bureau and get your student loans deferred or get your student loans forgiven. No, that's not how any of this works. Wait, mom, I even saw a video from a woman yesterday saying, that talking about in regards to the defaulted student loans, she said that they were going to file for bankruptcy and then go back to school. And that's how she was going to get her student loans forgiven. I was going to be like, oh no,
Right.
that's not how any of this works.
Not at all. And, and it's a shame that you have all of these people. And I have been right whenever I see someone that has a video on student loans and they're not representing, in the first place, the Department of Education does not have advertising right now on student loans. That means that everybody else out there that has the videos, they're just making things up. Because if it's not coming from the Department of Education or from the Secretary of Education right now, everybody else is just making up stuff. And I have
Right.
this is the bad part about it. I have not seen one video from someone that's a financial aid administrator. And I don't know if you said, but you and I were both trained financial aid administrators. In order to do that, you have to go through training with the Department of Education. We went to the Region 6 training in Dallas. We were also members of several financial aid organizations. And you have to go in those boring meetings and listen to
All
all
day.
new stuff. And then you got what they used to call, these letters from the Department of
Mm,
Education every day.
yeah.
Dear colleague letters. They
Dear
stopped that
colleague letters.
a
Yes.
few years ago. But you got all of this information on loans. And now you have all of these people. And I heard a man, there's a man on TikTok, and I have to say, and he's saying all the time, I am a financial advisor. Okay, just because you advise somebody on how to do stock, how to do their taxes, you are not a trained financial aid advisor. If you were, you would have because you get certificates, you would have that
Hmm.
certificate and you would show it. And so stop telling people there's no such thing as student loan forgiveness because President Trump moved most of the management of that out of the Department of Education, the financial management to the Small Business Administration. And that's still something that's up in the air. I'm sure
Hmm.
he just announced it a month ago. They have not finalized anything on it. So
Yep.
there is no such thing. Stop lying about it. And that's what's happening. And you know what? I tell people I have student loans. I have student loans from
Same.
my doctorate, and you have student loans from your master's. And
Hmm.
so guess what? You need to call your servicer, or you can go to studentloans.gov or and you can also find out the information. And they'll tell you, all of you people, you're going to pay for your student loans. Okay.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
forget it. Okay.
That's it. Like that is the only way to get your student loans. Like, and I did a whole video on this on TikTok. There are a handful of ways to get your student
Three.
loans forgiven. It's pretty much death, but other than that,
It's three ways that you can get student loans. One is if you have a proven disability. So you can't just say that I'm sick. That's not a
yeah.
disability. And it takes a long time. You have to have a lot of documentation and proof that you are on a disability. That's probably the hardest one to get. It's
Hmm.
very difficult to get. Then, if you work in public service, they also have a public service loan forgiveness program,
Oh,
and
that's the one.
that's only for certain, like if you're a firefighter, police officer, and that's in certain areas. And then they have the teacher loan forgiveness program. That's it. And even to get the teacher in public service, you have to pay your loan for 10 years and
Mhm.
then on time for 10 years, and then it could be forgiven.
And now, of course, the big one is, of course, with May 5th coming up, and that's when they're going to start calling in on all those people who have defaulted on their student loans,
Mhm.
which is really interesting to me because they're calling in on student loans that have defaulted. But I mean, we haven't been paying on our student loans really for the last 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, to be clear, like we've had a pretty nice long break. I know I have. Now I know like for private loans that you've had to pay on those, and yes, I have. I'm one of those people who had to make payments on my private loans over the last 5 years. But your federal loans have been on pause for
Yeah.
5 years, so I'm not understanding the whole freak out that's happening right now.
Well, it's probably people that were not paying it before COVID. Is the, they're probably
Exactly.
going way back, and they said, like, you know what, you've had these student loans for 10 years and you haven't paid them. I think, in the laws on student loans, and let me just say this. This is the most important thing. The laws on student loans are made by the U.S. Congress. They're
Yep.
not made by a state. So don't call your attorney general. This girl, you could, well, and all of these people, well, go and contact your state attorney general. File a complaint with your state. Your state not get involved in things that are federal. They
Hmm.
probably won't even respond to you, honestly. But if they do, they're going to tell you that is a federal program and we are not involved. They do not supersede the federal government on student loans. So please do not do that. And the other thing is that you just contact your servicer. And then let me say something too that I think really messed people up. When President Biden was running for office and he said that he was going to forgive student loans, and everybody believed him. And everybody was like, well, he forgave all of these student loans. Actually, all he did was because Congress, the president, that's not an executive decision on student loans themselves. They are always determined by Congress, okay? And so all President Biden did was made it available for people to do the three things that I said, and they advertised it a little bit more than any other president. But he did not change what. There was not one rule change. You still got it on disability if you were a teacher or public service. Those things did not change with President Biden. The only thing is more people probably applied for those three things under Biden than had done so previously. And I'm going to tell you something now. I'm going to give everybody a tip that you can do. There is an income-driven payment plan that if you're a low income, you can, or like if you're, well, of course you all know that you can get a forbearance or a deferment if you're unemployed.
Hmm.
That you can do. Please do that. Do not let your loans go into default and you're unemployed. You can just fill
Hmm.
that out. You're going to have to prove you're unemployed and don't lie about it now. You don't want to lie about
Yes.
it. Now, I recently talked to someone in my servicer, and for a little while, the income driven payment plans were no longer on the student loan on their website, but they
Yeah.
are back on now. And you can go in that way, but just keep in touch with your servicer. And then I had
Yes.
people argue with me. They're like, well, I don't think they can do this. They keep changing my servicer. No, this is what they said. They keep giving my loan to somebody else. I said, that's a servicer. If you
Hmm.
have NailNet, if you have, I forgot who I have, Ed
Mohila.
Financial or Mohila, all of those are servicers. Those are the people that service your loan. Your loan is still with the U.S. Department of Education, with the federal government. And they can change your servicer. And I also have to remind people that my mortgage company, your mortgage company does it every couple of years.
Yeah.
Everybody does it. I said, if you have a credit card, your credit
Yeah.
card company does it. I got something from Citibank telling me to pay my Kohl's bill. I was like, I don't have a card with Citibank. But
Hmm.
Citibank says, now we manage your Kohl's account. And
Yep.
so that's a common practice. And so people stop lying to people. Let me tell you. And then I've had people say about people getting student loans. This was the most important thing, even when I owned a school. And I would tell them, you know what? You don't mind getting a loan to go and buy clothes. You don't mind getting a loan to go buy a car, and a car is going to depreciate the day you drive it off the
Hmm.
lot. Your education does not depreciate. Now you might forget a few things like I have, but it does not. That's an asset that is not going to depreciate. Now,
Hmm.
if you don't want a student loan, and this is what schools will say, you don't have to get a loan, but you're going to pay for it. You write a check, give me a credit card or something. You have to pay for it. So it's really student credit, and I think if they called it credit, people will be more apt to not look at it so negatively. They look at it just like they do a Visa card. When somebody goes and gets a Visa card and goes on vacation, and then they look up and then they have a bill because they just spent $7,000 on a vacation. And that's student loans. It's the same thing.
Yeah, true. I think they're different though. I think now because school is so much more expensive. Like I just
It
looked this
is.
up the other day. The National Center for Education Statistics says the average tuition now at a 4-year college is $43,000 a year. So you're looking at 4 years, you're looking at $120,000 in just tuition. That's very different. That's even different from when I went and got my bachelor's degree. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's so very different. And that's such an enormous amount of debt to start off life in. You know what I mean? And like, and I'm one of those that's, I don't feel like anybody should have to pay my student loans for me. I made decisions. I decided to go get my master's degree. I decided to go to a private school to do that. That's on me. No questions asked. But I do not feel like the federal government should get interest on our student loans. Yes,
Now,
you gave me, I'm like, yes, you loaned me money to go to school. However, I did go to a school in which you have freely given endowments to all of these other schools. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you freely give money to all of these other institutions and all these other federal governments, freely give them money. But for whatever reason, because I have decided to go to school within this country so that I can work within this country, well, I have to pay you back that money plus interest? No, I don't like that at all. I think at the least the fair thing could be, hey, let's just cut out interest. Pay your student loans, cut it, let's cut interest.
well, I think now, looking at when President Trump stopped student loans, in both you, we have stories. They needed to stop the Department of Education because they were doing things because they, you know, and this will be my first time saying this on air, where they were extorting schools as well. My
Hmm.
school was extorted, and it's nothing but plain extortion from the Department of Education, just like all of the stuff that we've seen in all these other agencies. I think now that he's moved it, it will make them look at different aspects of it. But what they could do is increase the Pell Grants and increase,
Yes.
and not only it make well, they need to increase the qualification, I mean decrease the qualifications, because
Hmm.
people don't realize that under President Obama, very few people qualify for Pell Grants. That's something that Obama did. You have to be destitute to
Yes.
to qualify for Pell Grants. Now that's something they could, that I think they
Hmm.
should balance it and definitely allow more people to qualify for Pell Grants, and
Hmm.
therefore less people are getting loans. And this Pell Grant, people don't realize that the Pell Grant was what, I don't know what it is now, but just a few years
No.
ago, my last year was like, oh, I think $5,700. It was
Yeah.
like very
Hmm.
low. Therefore, and I mean, in order to do that, you were destitute, and if you were just a single person, you were not going to
No,
qualify
you
for
weren't.
Pell.
And they also, what another thing that they could do, they could offer grants to graduate students as well.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
think about what that would also do. Because listen, we know the education system in our country is abysmally low. We know just our
Mm-hmm.
rates and everything are incredibly low. If you want to incentivize people to continue going to school and to continue getting educated in higher level degrees, well, give them incentives. Like,
Right, right.
give grants to people, especially like if we want to incentivize people in learning STEM related career fields. Well, give grants, give people the money to go to school, because right now, if the majority of us are telling you, hey, we can't afford school because we already can't afford a house. We can't afford a house and school.
Well, you
Like,
know, I just look at it this way. I'm just going to die out my student loans. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
same.
you're not going to pay because, you know, when you have student loans cost more than a mortgage, than a house,
Yes.
then you have a problem.
All right, guys, that's all for this week's episode of Generations Unfiltered. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of our future episodes, because next week we're going to be talking of all things Doge and some of the things that they have uncovered while trying to look at some of the fraud and waste that is going on in our federal government. See you next time.
Thank you. Have a good evening.